Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Let's Be Frank About Sports. I am your host, Frank Agino. In this video, we are going to discuss the Houston Astros sign stealing controversy. This has been a very fascinating issue because of how in-depth this scandal has been. I know it's been a while since I posted, had doctor appointments and such, feeling better now. But this was a last week issue when it first came out, the report that was broken by Ken Rosenthal, courtesy of Mike Fiers, pretty much ratting out his former team, saying, listen, this is what these guys were doing, how we won the title in 2017. Obviously, Mike Fiers, no longer a member of the Houston Astros, was one of the guys who I'm pretty sure led the team in innings pitched that season, but then was left off the postseason roster. So he got a bit of a raw end of the deal, still got a championship ring out of it, and I just found it fascinating that he was willing to come out and really expose Houston Astros. And one of the other fascinating things is him playing in the division with the Oakland Athletics. So I think that is something that is worth noting. But regardless, this is something that was first reported last week, and yet the suspension still, or any punishment, still has not been released by Major League Baseball. And that is where this also becomes a problem, because here's the thing. If baseball, they acknowledge, okay, the Astros cheated, they have proof they did, great. But the fact that it's taking them so long to decide what they want to do makes me wonder if there are some underlying issues here. Now, could this be something that is going on with more teams throughout the league? It is possible, but I just find it hard to believe that other teams are as in-depth as the Houston Astros have been, if you have been reading the reports and all the different things that have been out there. And there's been a whole lot. And one of the ones that seems relatively consistent is one of the things the Astros were doing is that they were using the center field camera. They would look at what signal the catcher is putting down, and then they do some sort of banging noise where they're banging on a garbage can, and that would kind of tip the hitter, this is either a fastball or some sort of off-speed pitch coming, and then they tee off on it. And, that's kind of, it's Bush League, and all that stuff, and it's not the way baseball is supposed to be played. Sign stealing has been going on forever, but when you do stuff like this, when you take advantage of the technology and don't really use it for good use, for proper professional use, that is a massive problem, especially because it gives you a significant advantage. Because one of the big things about baseball and about pitching and the whole concept of pitchers trying to get hitters out, one of the things that pitchers do is they're always looking for a edge over the hitter. They're always trying to deceive them. One of the biggest problems with baseball is how long the games are. That is something that they've tried to institute some rules with pace of play. You think of the way that they want to now have this 3-batter minimum or no longer the intentional walk. Baseball has been trying to do little things here or there to try to cut down the time. But what is causing the most time in these games or how long it takes a pitcher to finally decide on what signal he's going to end up using that the catcher put down and then delivering the pitch. I mean, pitchers take all day to just do that one simple thing, and that adds on so much time to it. A quick side note, if you remember in the playoffs, MLB Network was airing some of the repeats of the games and condensed versions of them where they cut out all that extra stuff where the pitcher's waiting and the hitter steps out. They cut all that out. They just went pitch to pitch to pitch, and the game went so much quicker. They still had all the other stuff. There were still pitching changes and all that, but that alone, it makes a drastic difference on pace of play. So it's like you wasted all this time. You wasted hours trying to trick the Houston Astros hitters of, I'm going to make it look like it's a fastball, but it's really not. And you spent so much time deciding on what pitch to throw and then actually throwing it when the Astros knew all along what was coming, and then they tee off on it. And a couple other interesting stats that really stand out about that 2017 run in particular was the fact that the Houston Astros, the hitters, the home and away splits were pretty drastic in the postseason, and I know this is something that they were doing during the regular season as well, but because the postseason is obviously extremely more important, they were making, I guess, more of a conservative effort to cheat even more. And I know for Yankee fans, it's very frustrating because that was a really good series. It was a close series, intense series. Not only the one that just passed, but in that 2017 season as well, what ended up getting Joe Girardi fired. And I know a lot of Yankee fans, and it's a fair assessment. It's like, listen, if the Astros didn't do all this extravagant cheating, maybe we end up being world champions, and it changes the history of the Yankees. Maybe they keep Joe Girardi. Don't trade for Giancarlo Stanton because they had already won the championship. A lot of different things could happen, but none of that matters. But what does matter is one of the punishments that Major League Baseball, it might be considering. I know I've heard a lot of people say that they should consider it, and that is vacancy of the 2017 World Series title. That is a very tricky thing, and that would definitely be a serious punishment, much more so than you would see with anything else that's really happened in the sport in a very long time. I mean, other than, let's say, the Black Sox scandal, which happened so many years ago. Nobody was, really alive for that to happen. But still, I mean, the Astros do have to do something drastic. Not the Astros. The Major League Baseball has to do something drastic to the Houston Astros because this is such a major deal. It messes up so many things because it's just like if other teams are possibly doing it, you want to make sure that you put down a punishment on the Astros that is so serious that nobody else would even try it. I mean, it just really hurts the sport if there's going to be cheating to this magnitude. And you know what? I really don't like it at all because baseball, like other sports, they have lost some of their viewership. And it's hard for the young fan to get into baseball nowadays because of how long it is. Not as much action as your basketball or your football. The star players don't really promote themselves like the way they do in the other pro sports that are more popular. But still, it's like if someone's on the fence about watching baseball, or maybe some casual baseball fans that already do watch, they might be more inclined to not really watch anymore if they're going to see that type of cheating going on. One of the main reasons why we watch sports is we like the competition. We like competitive balance. We like to see two teams within the rules and the correct way to beat the other team. And this is just not the way to do it. And the other things that have come out about ways that the Houston Astros possibly could have stolen signs, we've heard whistling, which, I mean, that one, I don't really buy that because that wouldn't be the smartest way to cheat if you were going to, in theory, because of how much whistling goes on throughout an MLB game. So I don't think that's necessarily the best, but I do recall someone who's on the radio saying that athletics manager, again with the Athletics, Bob Melvin, telling the Astros dugout to quit it with all the whistling that was going on in the dugout. So it is possible, but I don't think that is, the best way to cheat if you're going to. I don't think that's exactly what the Houston Astros did in the playoffs in 2017. But one of the other reports that came out more recently was this idea that the Astro players could have been using buzzers on them to, field the signals. And once the signal came down, there was a button that, was pressed and that they felt so that they knew a pitch was coming. I don't really buy that either because if that was the case, the Houston Astros would know just about every single pitch that is coming. Now, one of the other things you could say is that, well, there are a lot of one-pitch or two-pitch pitchers out there and some really good ones. People like to say, Mariano Rivera, he had this cutter, you knew it was coming, but you still couldn't hit it. And that's very fair. But the thing is that Mariano did have other pitches, and you didn't necessarily always know when the cutter was coming. But when it's something like fastball or changeup, it does give you, obviously, a big advantage to know what is coming. And then you just be more ready for it, prepared for it, and then tee off. And one of the other interesting stats about this 2017 run was that the Houston Astros ended up winning just about all the games in the championship run 2017 at home. They won 8 out of 9. So again, not only were the home and away splits much better for the hitters, that translated into winning the games that were at home. So that's also something that even further, because you already know that they cheated, but it shows just how much of an impact it had on winning and losing. And that's the big problem, because one of the things you see with a team like the Patriots, who have been caught cheating many times, and the thing is that they still win without the cheating on some instances. And for me, it's like if the Astros are, to a lot of people, they were the favorite to win the World Series this year. A lot of people say actually, that the Houston Astros are the best team in baseball. I mean, I've found myself saying that before because of all the talent that they have on the team. They have so many good players and especially hitters. And it's just really disappointing as someone who has watched the Astros and has enjoyed seeing this homegrown talent for them be so productive to be caught up in something like this. It is very disheartening to see. But one of the other fascinating things is we talk about the World Series that just passed that the Houston Astros were in, home field disadvantage, where the road teams were able to win every single game in this series. And then you also find it fascinating that the Nationals, Sean Doolittle and others, released a plan that they did that counteracted the Houston Astros sign stealing, because that is something that was starting to become more and more popular, more and more people were aware of it. So teams had to do different things to prepare for it. And for me, one of the other interesting things that I found, that I think is that when the Houston Astros were eliminated in 2018, who was the team that eliminated them? The Boston Red Sox. And why is that a big deal? Because Alex Cora is the manager of the Boston Red Sox and was the bench coach of the Houston Astros in the 2017 playoff run. He was well aware of the sign stealing that was going on. How much he assisted in it, we don't know quite yet. It's going to be pretty tough to figure out. But still, I just find it fascinating that the two times the Astros were eliminated since 2017, one of the guys was a coach for their team, knew exactly how to counteract what they were doing. And then the Nationals said that they did different things because they knew that sign stealing was probably going on. So, again, it just shows that this wasn't a one-year thing. This is a multiple-year thing that the Astros have been trying to get away with. And that is also a big problem because that's really not fair to the rest of the league. It's not fair to the Oakland Athletics or, the Mariners and Athletics and Angels. Some of those teams, even with the Astros cheating or not cheating, they're not going to beat them. But I do think with a team like the Athletics that's been very competitive and gotten to a wild card spot, or, what if the Astros stole over some wins from the Red Sox or the Tampa Bay Rays during the regular season? Even that playoff series where Tampa Bay played them really close and then the Yankees played them really close again, it's just not fair to those other teams that stuff like this was going on. And again, it's just like a really big problem. And one of the other big things that has come out is that this idea that baseball might try to suspend Carlos Beltran, the now manager of the New York Mets. And, Met fan bias aside, I think that is really unfair to the Mets because what do the Mets have to do with this? Nothing. It's like the only person that would really suffer from that type of suspension is the Mets, and they had no idea about the Houston Astros sign stealing in 2017, and more importantly, how big of a role Carlos Beltran had in that sign stealing. So, would they still have hired Carlos Beltran as the manager? I don't know. That's something that we really could debate, and there's no true way of knowing. But still, I just think that the only person that's suffering is the Mets, and they had nothing to do with the Astros sign stealing. And one of the other fascinating things is that the guy who really does need to be suspended and to get a big punishment is A.J. Hinch, because he's the guy that cheated in 2017, and then once Alex Cora left, he cheated in 2018. Carlos Beltran was gone, and the Astros were still cheating in 2019. And he was the manager. He was the guy in charge of the team, and obviously he is extremely aware of the sign stealing. And for him to completely try to debunk the theory that he was being asked during the playoff series in the Yankees in the press conference, where he's kind of scoffing at the idea that there was sign stealing. He's like, "Oh, there's no way." He's trying to make jokes about it. But the thing is that he was cheating all along, and I really don't like that. So A.J. Hinch does deserve a big-time suspension, some type of serious punishment, and so does the rest of the organization. Money isn't going to do it. Draft picks, everybody knows, have a much bigger impact on a team, especially a team like the Astros, who built this championship team mostly on drafts. You think of drafting a guy like Bregman, Altuve, Correa, Springer. This year they had Yordan Alvarez do a really good job for them. So if you take away draft picks, it makes it hard for them to replicate that kind of team in the near future. So, and that's another thing where you talk about setting precedent and giving a big punishment so that other teams would not want to do this, because number one, if they were to win the World Series, they don't want to potentially lose the title. And number two, if they did do this, they don't want to lose draft picks, because in these major sports, draft picks have just become so important. And you'll find some trades where a team could get a solid player just for a first-round pick or, a few draft picks. And big-time players as well. So that shows you just how important these draft picks are. And if you take them away, like I said, it's going to make it less likely for any other team to do it. So I do think that that is very important too. But for me, it's very tough because it stinks that, to take a title away. But when you look at the numbers and just the way the Astros have cheated year after year after year and gotten away with it and gotten so deep into the playoffs and what have you, a vacancy, I do think it is worth it just because of, again, setting the precedent. I just think that's so important because you don't want the integrity of baseball to be in jeopardy. That is not good at all. Not only is, especially for them as far as a business. Because you don't want other fans to be like, I'm not sure if I want to watch it. There's so much cheating going on. None of this is really happening. The hitters know what pitch is coming anyway. It's not worth watching. I mean, I could see a bunch of people saying that if that was the case. So they have to do that, for their money. And again, just the reputation, not having other teams do it. Those are the most important things that go on with something like this. And, I mean, we'll see what happens because, again, we have no idea what baseball is going to do quite yet. We're hearing reports that they're going to do something serious, but we don't know what that something serious is. And, it does have to be something major. It has to be something that is different than the steroids or anything else so that teams don't do it. And Hinch needs a big suspension, and Cora needs a suspension as well because here's the thing. He was involved with the 2017 cheating. Then the Red Sox get caught with the Apple Watches the very next year. So Cora is showing you a track record of, being okay with the cheating to some extent. Because if it was like, okay, I'm not with the Astros anymore, I don't have to cheat. The fact that he still cheated right after that, that's a problem. Beltran, we don't know quite yet because he hasn't managed a single game as a member of the Mets. And again, I really don't think that is fair to the Mets to do that. And of course, as a quick side note is for the Mets, the Met fans, how about Brodie Van Wagenen and AJ Hinch apparently being pretty close friends? And during this long managerial search that the Mets were having, people were saying maybe AJ Hinch is a mystery candidate because him and Brodie are friends. Well, how come Brodie didn't use AJ Hinch's sign stealing to the Mets advantage so the Mets could have made the playoffs? How about that? I'm just joking, but still, it's just like, of course, the Mets couldn't get on this because the Astros did and the Red Sox did, and the Mets have the ties, with AJ Hinch and Brodie, but still, the Mets were not able to be good enough to make the playoffs. And for them in particular, because we talked about the Yankees and how, it is disappointing for them that they lost to a team that cheated. And the thing is, the title would become vacant, and you can't really give it to another team. It's just vacant. You know what I mean? It's something like that. But for the Mets, they have to do something with the bullpen. And so far, I don't like what Brodie is saying. I don't like what I'm reading or seeing because it's just like so many times, and we saw it again, the way the Mets have had these bullpen struggles for years, and the teams in their division who are better than the Mets and have the better bullpens are going after these top-tier relievers, and the Atlanta Braves did that signing Will Smith, the best available reliever on the market, and then the team that won the division in back-to-back years is making their bullpen even better. And it's like the Mets just don't show me the sense of urgency that these other teams do, and they have to because it is the only way they are going to catch up in this division and actually become a winning team. I'm getting very tired of seeing this idea of just being like, okay, let's not spend any money and just be perfectly okay with being third place or fourth place and not in the playoffs because we don't want to spend money and we want to keep our money. And to go along with that, I mean, this is a complete theory. This video that was posted from Andy Chavez's Instagram account of him throwing batting practice to Yoenis Cespedes, it made headlines because a lot of Met fans were getting excited because they're like, oh my goodness, maybe Cespedes could be back, and that'd be a big boost for the Mets, obviously, offensively. You look at their numbers and their record, the difference when Cespedes is in the lineup and out of the lineup. And the thing for me is what I find fascinating is the way the video got deleted shortly after it was posted. And that makes me wonder, how badly do the Mets want Cespedes to play? Because if you think about it, if the Mets' top priority is saving money, which you obviously know it is, it would make sense to not rush Cespedes back and not have him come back, try to trick the fans that he can't come back saying, oh, he couldn't heal from his injuries, and then keep that contract because they have the insurance money. But if it's out there that people know that maybe he has a chance of playing, then the Mets can't save that money. And I mean, that is my theory because why else would Andy Chavez delete this video, especially if he's working for the Mets now? That is just way too suspicious for me. And similar to some of the Astros stuff, we have no way of knowing. But the Mets do have to do something. I mean, real quick, one of the things that I saw was the idea of putting Lugo in the rotation. Now, in theory, it'd be nice, But on this team, it just won't work, especially if the Mets won't address their bullpen. Seth Lugo saved the Mets countless times in their big second half run out of the bullpen because of how bad the rest of the relievers were. Seth Lugo was the guy coming through and getting the big wins for them. So if he wasn't in that bullpen, it would be even worse, and the worst in all of baseball. Especially if, again, they're just not showing me the sense of urgency that they want to win. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope they make smart moves, not trading away talented players like a J.D. Davis. I really hope that the Mets would be more willing to spend the money to get a reliever than trade a J.D. Davis or another nice young player like a Dominic Smith or anyone along those lines, Brandon Nimmo, for a reliever. I just don't think that is the right way to approach it. That is not the way to win games. But we will see what happens, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one, everybody.